All right, so this is a suggestion via Discord. The name of the video is, "What's the secret of black luxury in poverty?" Apparently this will be coming from Thomas Sowell. Let's check it out. Let's jump into it, guys. Let's do it, guys.
Much of the cultural pattern of Southern rednecks became the cultural heritage of Southern blacks, more so than survivals of African cultures with which they had not been in contact for centuries. Even in colonial times, most blacks on American soil had been born on American soil. Moreover, such cultural traits followed blacks out of the southern countrysides and into the urban ghettos, north and south, where many settled. The very way of talking, later to be christened Black English, closely followed dialects brought over from those parts of Britain from which many white Southerners came, though these speech patterns died out in Britain while surviving in the American South, as such speech patterns would later die out among most Southern whites and among middle-class blacks, while surviving in the poorer black ghettos around the country. For example, where a Northerner said, "I am," "you are," "she isn't," "it doesn't," and "I haven't," a Virginian, even of high rank, preferred to say, "I be," "you be," "she ain't," "it don't," and "I hain't." These Virginia speechways were not invented in America. They derived from a family or regional dialects that had been spoken throughout the South and west of England during the 17th century. From these same regions of England came such words as yaller for yellow, axe for ask, acrost for across, y'all for you, bile for boil, do for door, dis for this, and that for that. Many.
All right, so yeah, definitely a lot of these are definitely most likely common speech. I think I've definitely heard somebody say "dough" one time, right? And if you absolutely catch me speaking to like a New Yorker specifically, being from New York, right? I can definitely say X. But I don't think that has anything to do with the fact that that's just how kind of things end up sounding, in New York.
Many of these usages have long since died out in England, though the word chitlins for hog entrails continued to be used in some localities in England, even in the 20th century, as such usage remained common among black Americans.
Bro, don't eat that. There's no excuse for that.
But no such words came from Africa, nor did the holiday Kwanzaa, which originated in Los Angeles. The slaves' custom of marking their marriages by jumping over a broomstick, a custom resurrected at a posh wedding among blacks in 20th century New York as a mark of racial identity, was in fact a pagan custom in Europe in centuries past, and survived for a time among Southern whites. Complaints about the improvidence of whites in the South and of their ancestors in Britain before that were echoed in W.E.B. Du Bois's picture of his fellow blacks in the 1890s. Probably few poor nations waste more money by thoughtless and unreasonable expenditure than the American Negro, and especially those living in large cities. Thousands of dollars are annually wasted in amusements of various kinds and in miscellaneous ornaments and gewgaws. The Negro has much to learn of the Jew and the Italian as to living within his means and saving every penny from excessive and wasteful expenditures.
Okay, here's the thing. So my father told me growing up something extremely, excessively interesting here. Under no circumstance do you attempt to finance or put anything on credit that you do not have saved in the bank, right? So if you're going to go ahead out and buy some $50,000 meaningless depreciating asset such as a vehicle, what you do is make sure you have $50,000 in the bank at all times, right? So if you have to pay off that vehicle at any time you can, I think that's what a lot of people get confused, right? So, the United States of America, we have a system of credit, right? For example, and people seem to be excessively credit and finance rich, or they look like they are, but in all actuality, they're confusing credit with wealth, and it's the weirdest thing in the world, bro. That brand new Hellcat you got, right? For about $120,000. Do you have $120,000 in the bank? You don't. You can't afford it. That means you can't afford it. Generally, the only asset or part of the asset class that I would probably say that is you can pretty much do that with would probably be a house or land, right? Like if you're financing land, it's not the same thing as you're going out and putting yourself back in chains. And what I mean by that is, how can you be of the ilk of the people that were brought over, where they were constantly in chains, for you to get a little bit of money, and then start just dumping chains all over you, bro? Why are we doing that? The imagery is absolutely wild, and it's silly. Again, you're living above your means, and it's ridiculous. Right? Obviously, perpetrated by rappers.
It was not, however, from Jews or Italians that blacks had absorbed their culture. Du Bois's description of the spending habits of blacks in the 1890s was echoed by a contemporary observer, Jacob Riis, who said that the Negro loves fine clothes and good living a good deal more than he does a bank account. Similar observations have been made by many others over the years, inside and outside the black community. For the lower socioeconomic classes among blacks, Gunnar Myrdal's descriptions of them near the middle of the 20th century still bore a remarkable resemblance to descriptions of Southern whites and their regional forebears in Britain, including less resourcefulness, disorganized family life, lax sexual morals, and recklessness, with tendencies toward aggression and violence. Despite a generally sympathetic approach to the study of blacks in his landmark book, An American Dilemma, which has often been credited with a major influence on the advancement of civil rights, Myrdal also noted the low standards of efficiency, reliability, ambition, and morals actually displayed by the average Negro. He observed something of the devil-may-care attitude in the pleasure-seeking of Negroes, and a general attitude in which life becomes cheap and crime not so reprehensible. Like other observers, Myrdal tended to attribute to slavery such aspects of black culture as the low regard for human life, when in fact, antebellum white. Like other observers, Myrdal tended to attribute to slavery such aspects of black culture as the low regard for human life, when in fact, antebellum whites had exhibited this same reckless disregard of lethal dangers, and so had their ancestors in Britain. Unlike many others, however, Myrdal also recognized the influence of the Southern white culture on the culture of blacks.
Okay, so here's the thing. This is not something that I would say that is extremely rare, right? I mean, this is kind of happening again right now with the concept of what's called doom spending, right? Where people are just like, listen, I don't care about anything anymore. The American dream is dead. Can't reach it. Can't afford it. Can't exist like my grandfather did in the 1950s or 60s, right? That life will never come back again. So you know what I'm gonna do? Let's just watch the world burn. That's basically what I think the overwhelming majority of Gen Zers, regardless of the hue of their skin, deeply melanated or lacking melanin, right? Just period, right? Specifically. But I could definitely see the correlation absolutely between like Southern impoverished, non-slave owning people of European descent. 200 years ago, I could definitely see how that was a thing too, historically at least.
Myrdal also recognized the influence of the Southern white culture on the culture of blacks, pointing out that the general Southern pattern of illegality maintained this low regard for human life. He also noted that the so-called Negro dialect is simply a variation on the ordinary Southern accent, that religious emotionalism was borrowed from and sanctioned by religious behavior among whites in the South, and that the Negro trait of audaciousness is characteristic of white Southerners too. He quoted black scholar and later statesman Ralph Bunche. White Southerners employ many of the defense mechanisms characteristic of the Negro. They often carry a chip on the shoulder. They indulge freely in self-commiseration. They rather typically and in real Negro fashion try to overcome a feeling of inferiority by exhibitionism, raucousness in dress, and exaggerated self-assertion.
Okay, guys, definitely be fully aware. He seems to be speaking in like generalizations, but just be fully aware based off what he's stating here. This is not everyone's life. I have not experienced a single thing that he's basically saying. Not in my specific life, but again, I was raised most likely different than a lot of other people that may look like me. specifically. I was raised on Long Island. If you know the area, you'll instantly be like, oh, he's one of them, right? But that's kind of the thing, guys. I definitely was not. I don't. This is foreign to me, bro. Both ways of this. Not a single person in my family acts like any of what's being depicted here.
Although Dr. Bunch presented these as parallels, historically it was, of course, the Southern whites who first had these patterns, reflecting patterns among their ancestors in Britain. In much of the literature on
and all of Appalachia, guys, keep that in mind here. We could talk about how this is still a thing. It may be ignored, as you know. The difference, I think, between cultures in the United States of America is that, unfortunately, Black Americans specifically kind of push forward some of the most debaucherous of the bunch, right? Like, generally, you'll idolize the ones who are doing the worst things, guys, and saying the worst things, the most debaucherous women you'll encounter in existence, generally. And now go to West Virginia. 98% white, guys, and it is crazy out there. All right, don't go there. Okay, seriously.
Black culture, however, the supposed influence of slavery has been far more sweepingly assumed, and the cultural influence of white Southerners and their forebears in Britain largely ignored. Attempts to derive the black manner of speaking from slavery and its parallel among whites as an influence from black speech were answered by a Southern historian who asked, "From whence came the drawl of the people of the upper Great Plains and of the Blue Ridge, Smoky, and Cumberland Mountains, who have had little or no contact with the Negro?" Another cultural historian of Southerners aptly observed that Southerners, white and black, share the bonds of a common heritage, indeed a common tragedy, and often speak a common language, however seldom they may acknowledge it. Half a century after Myrdal.
And that's why a lot of the times when it comes to the people who just carry themselves like this person that's being depicted, the closest thing to you, specifically, if you are a poor European, a poor American of European descent, right? Absolutely, and you are a Black American. You have so much in common. It's crazy. Well, and what I mean by this is that if you are a poor Black American, right? So I think a lot of the times people get confused with a lot of things here, right? So I personally would probably define it as it's your tax bracket, bro. Right? Like, you will have so much in common with someone with with your exact tax bracket. I mean that. Like, your lived experiences are almost identical. You're both being persecuted generally by police in areas that you are most likely living in because you may be impoverished, and generally the police over-police these areas because there's a lot of criminality. But if you live there, you basically look like a nail, right? And they're hammers. And it doesn't really matter, white or black in America at that time. It doesn't matter at all. You're going to be messed with the same, if that makes any sense, because they know you can't afford a lawyer, right? Who do you know? You know no one, and that's what I think a lot of people don't understand, right? Like, if you are poor and someone else is poor but they look different, you guys got the same issues. You got the same issues. That's it.
Another study of racial attitudes noted the intimidating ethnic style of many underclass black males, and noted that nearly half of all murder victims in America were black, and that 94% of them were killed by other blacks.
It's a proximity effect, bro. I mean, generally people that are being, deleted, let's say, are going to be deleted by people who live near them. And if Black Americans live near Black Americans, then that's the cause here. That's basically like saying people that live in, again, West Virginia, the highest group of people who do this are people of European descent. It's the same thing, bro. It's a proximity. People commit crimes towards people who look like them because they generally live together.
And that 94% of them were killed by other blacks.
Right.
Many of these killings were due to gang members who killed for such reasons as, "'cause you look at me funny," 'cause he give me no respect.
That's valid.
And other reasons reminiscent of the touchy pride and hair-trigger violence of rednecks and crackers in an earlier era.
That's valid. That's valid. Ooh, guys! I mean, that was a solid conversation here. I think it's big enough to open up, dialogue. Anything that can open up dialogue between groups that sometimes, occasionally, don't really see eye to eye because of absolutely stupid reasons, and I mean stupid, bro. Stupid. I don't respect it, guys. So, and that's the thing. A lot of the times there are people who just don't like other people because of the appearance of their the largest organ on their body, bro. It's wild. Sorry, it's wild. But anyway, listen, you guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Enjoy your day thoroughly. Guys, before we go, are you guys subscribed to the other channels? Logical Movie Reviews with Mr. L. Boyd along with Mr. L. Boyd Music. Both are found in the description. Check it out.